Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time when just walking too close to a palace wall could be considered suspicious behavior, and when surviving a day among palace guards required the social skills of a diplomat, the reflexes of a cat, and the luck of a lottery winner. You're not here to start trouble, but trouble, it has a habit of finding anyone who breathes too loudly near royal stonework. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle forward, your sandals squelching slightly in last night's dust. The sun isn't even at full blast yet, but the heat is already composing its daily love letter to your armpits. Ahead, the palace looms, a grand maze of polished limestone, carved lintels, and arrogance. You're not here for mischief, just hoping to deliver a small basket of figs and maybe survive long enough to be ignored. But before you get within 10 steps of the main gates, a spear blocks your path. It's attached to a guard, naturally, tall, unblinking, wrapped in polished bronze and deeply unimpressed with your face. You do what people in history always do in this situation: freeze awkwardly and try not to look guilty, which of course makes you look exactly like someone smuggling assassination scrolls in their hair bun. Name, the guard says. You respond. Quietly. Too quietly. Name. Now you're yelling your name like a child caught sneaking honey. A second guard appears, seemingly summoned by the rise in volume. You are now surrounded by men who could probably kill you with a decorative belt buckle and not feel emotionally complicated about it. Palace guards weren't just bodyguards, they were status symbols, handpicked for height, loyalty, and the kind of intense gaze that can make someone rethink their entire life's choices. The ancient Egyptians had the Medjay, elite Nubian warriors who guarded sacred precincts and enforced royal law. The Romans, they had the Praetorian Guard who could elevate or assassinate an emperor depending on what kind of mood they were in. The Ming Dynasty's palace guard system was so complex it made chess look like hopscotch. And none of them had name tags. You shift your basket of figs slightly. It squishes. The guard's eyebrow twitches. What's that? You attempt to say fruit, but your voice cracks into a sound only dogs and alarmed pigeons can hear. Another eyebrow. He looks at the figs like they might be explosive, or worse, unauthorized. Here's a fun fact. Historians still argue whether certain palace guards had the authority to search citizens or only nobility. Either way, they almost always did search people, especially those who arrived looking nervous and sticky. A third guard now arrives. He doesn't speak. He just stares at the basket, then at you, then at the first two guards. There is a pause so long it feels ceremonial. The basket is taken from your hands with extreme caution, like it contains either royal treasure or highly contagious bees. You're not told where it's going. You may never see it again. Farewell, figs. You're told to step aside. You do? Onto a patch of gravel that crunches loudly under your feet. The guards flinch. One of them stares at your sandals. Where did you get those? You blink. The market. Maybe. A cousin's friend's uncle? Apparently that answer isn't specific enough. It's worth noting that in many palatial societies, even shoes could be considered political. Certain materials, dyes, or stitching patterns denoted your class, allegiance, or recent travels. Wearing the wrong sandals in ancient Persia could land you in questioning. Wearing the right sandals, but with too much enthusiasm, might do the same. And so begins the inspection. Your hair is examined for messages. Your tunic is shaken out like a rug. One guard even sniffs your shoulder. You smell like life, which unfortunately can resemble conspiracy. You try not to look at the weapons, the spears, the swords, the pole arms with names like Horse Splitter and Reputation Ender. They gleam in the morning light. You pretend not to notice one guard quietly sharpening his dagger against his own thigh. You assume that's normal. You pray it's normal. The crowd at the gate thickens. Other hopeful visitors approach. An old man with a letter, a woman carrying 3 pigeons, a boy trailing what appears to be a very confused goat. All are intercepted. All are sniffed, patted, or verbally dissected. You are not special. You are just early. Finally, the first guard returns. He may pass, he says. Not you, mind you, he. Like you are a concept, not a person. But that's good. Concepts don't get arrested. You nod, bow, shuffle forward. Every step feels like it could trigger a trapdoor. You imagine spikes, lions, a judge with very strong opinions about figs. And yet, you pass the threshold. The palace swallows you whole. Behind you, the gates close with a heavy thunk that echoes like a final decision. You have officially survived the first encounter with palace guards. It only cost you your figs, your dignity, and approximately half of your body's salt content. Congratulations. You're now inside the palace and completely unprepared for what's coming next. You're barely 10 paces into the palace when it hits you. Not the ambiance, not the decor, not the divine sense of awe, but a metallic clang that rings through the stone corridor like someone trying to play percussion with a sword and a suit of armor. A palace guard just turned the corner. He's not walking. He's stomping. Like the floor insulted his grandmother. His armor doesn't creak. It announces. It rattles and hums with every movement, as if a blacksmith somewhere is conducting a symphony with every step. You try to hug the wall like a socially anxious shadow. The guard doesn't acknowledge you. Not with his eyes, not with a nod, not even with a dismissive grunt, which somehow feels worse. He passes. His footsteps echo, then fade. You let out a breath that sounds louder than your entire internal monologue, which frankly has been stuck on repeat since you entered. Don't die. Don't die. Try not to die. Another clang. This time, 2 guards. They're speaking quietly to each other in the way guards do. Half code, half bored complaint, all threat. One of them gestures with his chin. You flinch. He's not gesturing at you. Or maybe he is. It's hard to tell when someone looks like they've memorized exactly 72 ways to break a rib cage with their elbow. Palace guards don't smile, not unless it's the terrifying kind, the one that says, I've been given full authority to remove you from this hallway, and possibly from history. You keep moving, slowly, casually slow, whatever that means. There's a courtyard ahead. Sunlight spills over flagstones, a little too bright, like the gods left the heavenly spotlight on full beam. You spot another set of guards, standing perfectly still in the shade, unmoving as statues, which is disturbing because for a full 2 seconds you think they are statues. That's when it happens. From somewhere behind you, a sudden sharp whistle, not a bird, not the wind, a blade. You don't even have time to turn fully when a guard sweeps past you, fast, precise, and very much on a mission. He doesn't touch you, but you feel the air peel sideways in his wake, like being passed by a tornado with a sword. It's not personal, probably, maybe, hopefully. Palace guards were often trained from childhood. In Byzantium, they recruited Varangian warriors, tall, terrifying Norsemen who thought flinging axes at people was a great way to break the ice. In Ottoman courts, the Janissaries were taken as boys, converted, trained in loyalty, and expected to operate with machine like discipline. And in some Chinese dynasties, the eunuch guards weren't just protectors, they were also palace administrators, advisors, and occasionally murderers with excellent calligraphy. You wonder what this one's specialty is: spearwork, intimidation, making you consider the fragility of your own kneecaps. Another clang. He's not alone. This one's coming directly toward you now. His gaze scans the hallway like it's a scroll of possible crimes. He's holding a pole arm that might double as a ladder or a punishment, and he's headed straight for the spot you're standing on. Your brain launches into full emergency diplomacy mode. Do you speak first? Bow? Pretend you're part of the architecture? Too late. Move, he says. Just that. One word. It lands in your ears like a minor earthquake. You move, too quickly maybe, because now you've tripped slightly over your own foot, done a little hop step of survival, and made a soft squeak that might haunt you until your deathbed. Smooth. The guard's eyes don't blink. He simply steps around you like you're an inconvenient shrub. You consider saying thank you, but your survival instinct punches that idea in the throat. Instead, you back into a nearby alcove, some sort of recess, holding an urn or a decorative plant, or maybe just a cleverly disguised panic shelter. You pretend to study the stonework like it's the most fascinating rock since Moses cracked one open for water. That's when a new sound reaches your ears. Not clanging, not boots, snoring. Faint, rhythmic, suspiciously human. You peer around the corner of the alcove. There, seated behind a column, is a young palace guard, supposedly on duty, head tilted, mouth slightly open, helmet askew, snoring gently like a baby rhino in light REM sleep. You should feel smug, vindicated, but mostly you feel afraid for him, because just down the hall, yep, here they come, a pair of very awake, very judgmental superior guards. The snorer is about to enter the worst phase of his career, being noticed. And yes, in case you're wondering, historians still debate the strictness of discipline among palace guards. Some accounts describe them as perfect machines of vigilance. Others suggest that after the third ceremonial procession of the day, even the most hardened soldier becomes extremely interested in pretending to check for squirrels behind banners. You turn away just in time. You don't want to witness what happens next. You hear a sharp ahem, followed by a gasp, a clatter, and the unmistakable sound of someone realizing they may soon be guarding a grain warehouse in the desert. You slide further along the wall, eventually reaching a shaded colonnade. The light is gentler here. The breeze, if you can call it that, is a slightly less aggressive version of hot air. You lean against a column and close your eyes, just for a second. Then, a whisper. Not human. Metal on metal. Your eyes fly open. A guard is standing 5 feet away. He was not there 5 seconds ago. Did he teleport? No. He ghosted in, moved like a thought, silent, terrifying, wearing full armor and still somehow silent as mist. He gives you a look that says, "I'm watching you." You nod, slowly, like you're agreeing with your own imminent doom. And then, just like that, He turns and vanishes back into the corridor, taking your heartbeat with him. You exhale. Congratulations. You've made it through the second layer of palace guard encounters. And yes, this is still the morning. You think you're safe now? Silly you. The corridor ahead opens into a vaulted hall, the ceiling painted with celestial scenes, gods, stars, chariots flying through the night sky. You'd appreciate the artwork more if you weren't about to be killed for bad posture, because now you're in the presence of royalty, not the actual pharaoh or emperor or grand celestial being of the realm, no, but someone important enough to warrant a security radius the size of a small country. And you, innocent, figless you, have wandered a little too close. It starts with a hush, the kind of unnatural silence that falls when a sacred procession is about to pass through, or when a lion has just entered the village. You hear a flutter of fabric, slippers on tile, and then the guards move. They don't run, they shift, like pieces on a chessboard with very sharp elbows. One steps in front of you, another behind, a third to your left, who may or may not have materialized from the decorative wall carving of a falcon. You do the only thing you can think of. You bow, but not too low, because in some cultures that implies mockery, and not too late, because that's disrespectful. Also, not too fast, because then it looks sarcastic. You attempt a medium velocity, medium depth bow, with the facial expression of a devout, harmless, barely literate gardener. Historians still debate how much protocol surrounded encounters with royalty, especially in courts like ancient Mesopotamia or the Mughal Empire. What's agreed upon is this: messing it up usually led to immediate regret. You straighten slowly. The royal figure is passing now, surrounded by silk, flanked by guards, whose sole purpose is to vaporize threats. Their eyes are scanning everything. One of them actually narrows his gaze at your knees. You don't know what your knees did, but now you're apologizing to them telepathically. The procession glides past, the air now thick with perfume, dust, and the overwhelming scent of your own sweat-soaked fear. One of the guards lingers behind for a beat too long, just watching you, as if memorizing your shape, your scent, your entire tax record. Then he turns. You are allowed to breathe again, but you don't. Not just yet. Not until the echoes fade. Not until the final slipper disappears around the marble corner. You're trembling slightly, whether from adrenaline or the sheer volume of eye contact you just endured. It's hard to say. What's certain is this: palace guards were never just muscle. They were the final filter between a ruler and their people. And that filter was very efficient at removing anything it didn't like. You resume walking, slowly, cautiously. You hug the wall like you're dating it. Every guard you pass pretends not to notice you, but you feel their gaze, always the gaze. You enter a side chamber, small and dimly lit. A servant is sweeping the floor with a reed broom that looks older than the calendar. He doesn't look up. He doesn't need to. He knows you're a visitor. You're still flinching at tile creaks. You smile at him. He does not smile back. Instead, he mutters, "Keep your hands visible." You do. Palace guards are trained to watch the hands, not the eyes, not the feet, the hands, because hands draw daggers, or drop poison, or hold scrolls filled with inconvenient opinions. Even scratching your nose could be misinterpreted as the beginning of a curse. In one Persian court, guests were reportedly required to keep their palms open and upturned as they passed guards, just to prove they weren't clutching anything treasonous or sneezy. You emerge from the chamber into another corridor, narrower now. The walls are lined with portraits, not paintings exactly, relief carvings, Rows of solemn faces, and beneath each one, a small bronze plate engraved with a name and title. You pause before one. It's a guard, or was. The plaque reads, First Spear of the Eastern Gate, died protecting the Lotus Pavilion. The date is vague, but the emotion is clear. Even guards had guards, it seems. A noise. Footsteps. You whirl too quickly. Another guard, this one older, grayer. He raises an eyebrow so subtly it could be mistaken for a breeze. You bow. He doesn't bow back. He just says, Careful. The portraits see more than you think. You have absolutely no idea what that means, but you nod like it was profound. He walks on, leaving you to your confusion and increasingly untrustworthy knees. Eventually, you find a quiet alcove, a small bench beneath an ivy-laced window. You sit, you exhale, you try to remember what your original purpose was. The figs? Long gone. The message you were supposed to deliver? Possibly still in your sandal, now soaked with fear. But at least, for the moment, you're alone. Then a sound breaks the silence. A soft click. You look up. There's a guard, right in front of you. Again, no footsteps, no warning, just materialized. And he's holding out your fig basket, untouched, still warm. You blink. He nods. Then, with the smallest smirk, a real one, not the terrifying kind, he turns and walks away. So maybe, just maybe, you are going to survive this, at least until lunch. The courtyard ahead promises peace. Naturally, it lies. You walk toward the archway with cautious optimism, the fig basket still cradled in your arms like a sacred offering. The sun filters through carved stone latticework, dappling the ground with flickering shadows. Birds chirp. There's a faint smell of jasmine. It almost feels pleasant. Then you see them, two palace guards, standing at the threshold like twin statues, expressionless, motionless, suspiciously symmetrical. One's got a scar running down his cheek like a dramatic plot twist. The other appears to have been carved from old leather and unresolved tension. They don't move as you approach, not an inch. You freeze. Again, you're getting really good at this. One raises a hand, palm up, not a wave, an order. You step forward slowly, offering the fig basket like a sacrifice. The scarred one takes it, sniffs it, pokes it, and then, of course, hands it to the other one, who sniffs it again. You half expect him to interrogate a fig. Where were you on the night of the festival? Who cut you in quarters? You wait. Apparently, they're not done. One of them reaches behind the nearest column and pulls out a sandal, not yours. But they hold it up beside your foot as if matching shoe DNA. They inspect the wear pattern, the strap placement, possibly the sole of the sole. Then the questions begin. Where did you enter? Who sent you? Why are your laces uneven? You stammer out answers that even you don't fully understand. Something about gate rotations and produce delivery, and a minor case of uneven cobblestones. They grunt. A low, unanimous sound of disapproval. Guards in palaces often operated on instinct as much as instruction, and nothing triggers instincts faster than someone who hesitates during a question about sandals. In ancient Japanese courts, guards could identify spies by gait. In Mughal India, unauthorized slippers in royal chambers were once considered grounds for execution. And in Versailles, the wrong silk pattern could get you politely exiled to somewhere that smells permanently of geese. One guard leans in and sniffs the air around you. Rosewater, he asks. I what? You blink. He squints. You smell like the Queen's bathhouse. You nearly apologize for your pores, but he's already turned to his companion, muttering about potential impersonation. You protest. You don't even own Rosewater. They ignore you. Then one guard gestures to the archway. Step through. You obey. But you don't breathe, because beneath that arch is a small square chamber, empty, except for a stone slab, a pitcher of water, and a scroll on a pedestal. You've entered the security antechamber. You didn't know that was a thing. It is. They follow you inside. The air here is oddly cooler, but not refreshing. More like the chill of someone watching you through a two-way tapestry. Drink, one says, pointing to the pitcher. You look at it like it might scream. Is that necessary? Drink, he repeats. No change in tone, no hint of mercy. You take a sip, lukewarm, tastes like anxiety. The guards nod. They open the scroll. It's a list. Names, titles, odd symbols that might mean harmless or has a face like a beetroot. One of them traces down the parchment with a metal stylus. Not listed, he says. Could be a replacement courier, the other mumbles. Could be a decoy, replies the first. You clear your throat. Could be hungry. Silence. Then, the scarred one turns to you, states your intent. This is it. The moment where you must convince two men trained to kill that you are not, in fact, part of an elaborate plot involving forged sandals and fragrant shoulders. You inhale. I have figs, not your best work, but somehow, against every probability known to man, it works. They exchange a glance, the kind that says, he's clearly too stupid to be dangerous. One of them sighs and gestures toward the final door. Deliver your offering, then leave. No lingering. You nod, bow, curtsy slightly by accident, and back out like a confused butler. The final hallway is empty. No guards, no echoes. Just you, and your now twice inspected basket of fruit. You reach the designated chamber, a small room with red cushions, incense that smells of expensive boredom, and a single open window. You place the figs gently on the table and exhale as if releasing an entire day's worth of potential executions. That's when you see it. A guard, standing outside the window, on the ledge, 3 stories up, not moving, not speaking. Just there, watching. You jump back slightly, knock over a cushion, and mutter something unholy about acrobatics. He does not blink. Some guards were trained in aerial surveillance. In certain Roman and Byzantine palaces, guards were stationed on rooftops for eagle-eye perspective. In Forbidden City, China, security protocols included lattice-view walkways, where silent watchers could observe courtyards unnoticed. You? You just accidentally made eye contact with one. He tilts his head. You wave awkwardly. He nods. Then he's gone. Just like that. As if gravity decided to look away for a moment. You're not even surprised anymore. You leave the chamber. The guards at the courtyard give you a single nod. You return it with the desperate gratitude of someone who still has most of their limbs attached. As you cross the courtyard, a breeze picks up. Just slightly. Just enough to carry away the last remnants of rosewater. You smell like stone now. Dust, sweat. You smell like someone who's survived another layer of palace protocol, which, statistically speaking, puts you ahead of at least 30% of visitors. You think it's over. That delivering figs, surviving eyebrow interrogations, and narrowly avoiding window-ledged guards means you've earned some peace. And then you hear it. Squall! You flinch so hard you nearly trip over your own past decisions. It wasn't a scream. It was bird-like, but somehow furious. You glance around in panic. There, perched on a marble fountain, a parrot, wearing a tiny silver ankle bell. You do a double take. The parrot stares at you. You stare back. Then it opens its beak and recites perfectly. Treason is a breeze. If you're stupid enough, you blink. It repeats it, louder, with more enthusiasm. The nearest guard appears faster than guilt. He's not walking. He's gliding with that deeply unsettling palace guard efficiency. His eyes go straight to the parrot, then to you, then back to the parrot. Now, did you say something to it? He growls. You stammer. No, it said something to me. Parrots don't lie, the guard says, deadpan. This is a sentence that, under normal circumstances, would require context. But here, in the stone belly of a royal palace, surrounded by armored suspicion and highly educated birds, it somehow makes perfect sense. You're dragged to the side, not roughly, but firmly. You're now standing in front of a short wooden table under a vine-covered canopy. The parrot follows, hopping, judging, reciting. Apparently, you've just entered the Avian Intelligence Review Station. This is not a joke, because in more than one historical palace, birds were trained to repeat suspicious phrases overheard in hallways. Whether this was useful or just deeply confusing remains, well, historians still argue. But the belief in animals as passive surveillance tools, that one goes way back. In 17th century Persia, royal pigeons were fitted with small scroll holders. In Renaissance Italy, dogs were used to sniff out messengers. And in some Chinese courts, monkeys were trained to recognize the scent of poison. You can't make this up. Your parrot accuser is now strutting in a circle, repeating fragments of what sounds like a revolutionary poem. A second guard joins. He doesn't speak. He simply places a scroll in front of you. On it, phrases the parrot is known to recite. Most are harmless. A few are inflammatory. All are marked with colored symbols, and, worryingly, none are explained. What color did it use? The silent guard finally asks. You hesitate. I what? Parrots don't have subtitles. The first guard narrows his eyes. He's mocking the system. You wave your hands. No, no, no. I just mean, I didn't teach it anything. I barely even like birds. The parrot hops up onto the table, cocks its head, pecks at the scroll, then, in a disturbingly familiar tone, says, check his shoes for treason. You almost cry. The guards exchange a glance. One sighs. We'll have to check the shoes. And so begins the most humiliating moment of your life. The treason shoe examination. You sit. You remove your sandals. The guards sniff them, weigh them, knock them together like coconuts. One taps on the sole as if expecting a confession. You just sit there, quietly dying inside. Eventually they decide your shoes are, at worst, badly made, but not revolutionary. You're allowed to stand again. The parrot, now bored, squawks once and flies off toward what you hope is a deeply secure bird retirement tower. Keep your distance from talking animals, one guard mutters, especially ones with opinions. You nod like this is normal, and then you're handed a slip of papyrus, a warning, not a formal charge, but a you've been noticed document. Apparently standard procedure when you've been squawk reported. You tuck it into your belt. You don't want to know what happens if you throw it away. As you shuffle off, a boy runs past, maybe 10 years old, in servant's garb, barefoot and fast. He's holding something small and flapping in his hand, a scroll. Immediately, two guards yell, "Stop!" The boy does not stop. He zigs. He zags. He ducks under a bench, hops over a flower pot, and disappears through a tapestry, like a mouse with a master's degree in parkour. One guard turns to the other. Another one. That's the third today. Kids these days, the other replies, already jogging after him. You're left standing there, sandals in hand, with no scroll, no figs, and no clear idea of what's going on. Then it hits you. The scrolls, the birds, the random ankle inspections. This palace is paranoid, not just protect the king paranoid. Everything is a threat paranoid. And who enforces that paranoia? The guards. They're not just soldiers, they're censors, interrogators, body language experts, fashion critics, scent analysts, and, now apparently, bird whisperers. You wander through the next arch, still barefoot, and then you hear it. Again, the parrot. But now it's far away, and it's singing. You pause to listen. The tune? Some sort of lullaby. Sweet, peaceful. The lyrics? The floor is spiked for fools who don't look down. You look down and realize you were just about to step on a loose tile. You freeze. A passing guard casually points to an alternate path. You're learning, he says without breaking stride. You step carefully onto the new route, and your heart is doing backflips. You're surviving, barely. And maybe, just maybe, that parrot saved your life, which is deeply upsetting, but you'll take it. You're still walking barefoot, not by choice, of course. Your sandals are now deemed temporarily suspicious, which is palace speak for we may burn these later just in case. So you pad along ancient stone floors, hoping they've been cleaned this decade. They haven't. The corridor turns, and suddenly you're in another courtyard. This one is quieter, shadier. There's a large basin in the center with lily pads and a single bored looking turtle floating like he too is on guard duty. You smile at him. He blinks like a bureaucrat. Then a voice. You there. Why are you smiling? You freeze. Because of course there's a guard nearby. Hiding. Behind a pillar. Or a thought. You straighten up, hands raised in what you hope is the international sign for I am entirely harmless and also very polite. Just admiring the turtle. A pause. The guard says, stepping out from behind a vine-covered column. He looks at the turtle, then at you. That's not a turtle, it's a water monitor. You blink. Oh, he keeps staring. Water monitors can detect poison, you know. You glance at the creature. It looks about as interested in poisoning as a sock puppet. Historians still argue whether that's true. The guard adds helpfully. You nod. Right, of course. He tilts his head, as if still evaluating your aquatic animal taxonomy skills, then grunts and walks off, leaving behind a faint trail of judgment. You exhale. The courtyard seems peaceful again, until you notice the columns. They're beautiful, carved with spirals and vines and what at first appear to be decorative inlays. Then you look closer. Not inlays. Eyes. Tiny openings. Guard eyes. Watching from within. You shiver. Palace design wasn't just about aesthetics. It was defense in disguise. Hidden corridors. Concealed viewing slits. Echo-enhancing acoustics that could pick up whispers from one end of a hall to the other. Some ancient Indian palaces reportedly had hollow walls to carry sound from chamber to chamber. And you've just walked into what appears to be the architectural embodiment of we're always watching you. You shuffle forward, avoiding the turtle, monitor lizard, or whatever it is, and find yourself at the base of a grand staircase. It rises in a graceful arc, the steps polished from centuries of sandals, heels, and panic. Two guards stand at the top. One yawns, the other twirls a baton, but in that slow, deliberate way that suggests he could also use it to silence you and your entire family tree. You ascend the stairs, heart pounding like it's training for a gladiator match. Halfway up, the yawning guard calls out, "What's your business?" You pause, because that's a great question. What is your business? Fruit, you say again. It's your fallback answer. Simple, believable, tragically unthreatening. The guards exchange a look. Fruit again, one mutters. That's the third fruit person today. Could be a trend, the other shrugs. Or a conspiracy. They let you pass. At the top of the stairs, you're funneled into a narrow gallery. The walls are covered in ornate tapestries, each depicting a grand historical moment: battles, coronations, festivals, and what appears to be a man very angrily losing a chess match to a goat. You pause at that one. Don't linger. A guard snaps from behind the tapestry. You jump. Then it happens again. Another voice from the opposite side. Keep walking. You don't belong to the goat chamber. You obey. Clearly, the tapestries are more than decoration, they're camouflage. Behind each one, a niche. Behind each niche, a guard. Possibly eating, possibly napping, definitely watching. One sneezes. You sneeze in response, out of politeness. The silence that follows is thick. You keep walking. The gallery opens into a chamber flooded with golden light. Windows, real ones this time, let in the sun. There's a dais at the far end, and two guards flanking it, perfectly mirrored in pose and expression. You do not approach the dais. You do not even look directly at it, because this is one of those spaces, the kind where everything feels like ceremony. Even dust motes float in slow motion, as if rehearsed. A servant crosses in front of you, walking backward while ringing a soft bell. Behind him, a trio of guards escort what appears to be an empty pillow. You have no context for this. You move toward a side exit, slowly, lightly, trying to step only on the darker parts of the tile, not because you've been told to, but because it feels safer. You reach the exit. No one stops you. You step through and find yourself face to face with yet another guard. This one is younger, barely older than you, but his eyes are ancient. The kind of eyes that have seen things and filed reports about them. He doesn't speak. He just points to your belt. You'd forgotten the warning scroll, the parrot issued papyrus of mild disgrace. He gestures again, this time toward a door marked with a red ribbon. Oh no, you know what that is. The follow-up review chamber. You swallow. The young guard leads you down a narrow hallway, lit by torches and bad intentions. The walls are lined with portraits of past guards, each one holding a weapon, each one looking deeply disappointed in you, personally. You reach the door. It opens with a creak that probably has a name and a reputation. Inside, a single chair, a table, and a guard. Bold, stern, carved from mahogany and cynicism. He gestures. You sit. He says nothing. He waits. So you wait too. And in that silence, you realize something. They don't always need to question you. Sometimes the waiting is the test. You sit up straighter. You breathe slower. And you prepare for whatever this is. Because when it comes to palace guards, survival isn't about being innocent. It's about looking just guilty enough to be boring. You sit there, still, breathing as if your lungs are on trial. Across from you, the old guard doesn't blink. Not once. He stares at you like you're a spilled cup of milk, and he's deciding whether to yell or mop. The room is painfully quiet. Not in a comforting bedtime way, but in the something is about to fall way. The only sound is the distant drip of a leaky something somewhere. Probably guilt. You shift slightly in your chair. The wood creaks. The guard raises one eyebrow by a nanometer. You freeze again. Then, finally, he speaks. What were you doing during the royal procession? You panic slightly, because this sounds like a trap. And also, because you hadn't realized there was a royal procession. You rack your brain. Standing, you say? He doesn't respond. I mean, respectfully. Still no response. Very upright standing. Supportive. Passive. Emotionally neutral. A pause. Then the guard writes something down on a scroll. You try not to cry. This is what they call ceremonial fatigue. Not yours, theirs. Palace guards stood for hours, sometimes entire days, during royal events, completely motionless. They trained their muscles to ignore fire ants, hunger, even bladder distress. Meanwhile, you are under investigation for shifting your weight from left foot to right. In medieval England, royal yeomen were sometimes inspected after long vigils to ensure they hadn't swayed more than 2 degrees. In Ottoman ceremonies, deviation from stance could result in lashings or worse, being assigned to peacock feather dusting. The guard looks up again. Did you clap? You blink. Was I supposed to? No. Oh. He narrows his eyes. There is, of course, no right answer. He writes something else. You glance around the room, hoping for something, anything less intense. The walls are bare. The floor is stone. The only decoration is a small polished skull on a shelf. You decide not to ask. Then he says, demonstrate. You blink again. Demonstrate what? Your standing posture. You slowly rise from the chair, limbs creaking, dignity already planning its escape. You assume a pose. Hands by your side, feet slightly apart, head up but not too proud. The guard studies you like a disappointed posture coach. You slouch. It's hereditary, you whisper. More scribbling. You sit back down. He lets the silence stretch again. This is a game. You're not sure of the rules, but you're losing. Then he unrolls a different scroll. This one has drawings, silhouettes of people, each doing something, clapping, bowing, coughing, yawning, fainting. He points to one. It's a figure, hands slightly raised, mouth open, captioned, unapproved encouragement. Is this you? I don't know. Looks like you. Does it? More scribbling. This is the worst personality test you've ever taken. He sighs. You'll be added to the procession log. You nod solemnly, as if this is an honor. It probably isn't. Next, he says. The door opens. You're dismissed. You rise, bow slightly, and make your way out, with the grace of a soggy scroll. Outside the review chamber, the air feels thick with relief and uncertainty. You survived. Probably. There's no certificate, just the absence of chains. You turn a corner, looking for an exit, or at least a friendly servant who doesn't smell like judgment, and nearly run into another guard. This one is younger, nervous, sweaty in a way that says, first day on the job, or had goat milk for lunch. He's holding a scroll. He drops it. You both bend to pick it up. You make eye contact. This is a mistake. He looks at you. You look at him. The scroll tears. A tiny piece falls out. Not paper. A coin? No. A token. With a strange symbol. You don't recognize it. He pales. You didn't see that. You nod. I absolutely did not. He whispers, good. Then runs. Just bolts down the corridor. Like someone fleeing bad decisions and unpaid library fines. You look around, no witnesses. Then you hear it. Clank. 2 guards. Turning the corner. They see you. They see the scroll piece. They see the awkward expression on your face that says, I don't want to be part of this subplot. Explain, one says. You open your mouth. Nothing happens. This isn't your fault. You were just standing here. But somehow, the guard interrogation gods have chosen you again. You raise your hands. He dropped it. I tried to help. They pick up the token, examine it. Secret faction? Possibly, the other guard mutters. Could be connected to the cloak shortage last month, or the mysterious pigeon disappearances. They look at you, hard, one steps closer. Are you involved? I'm not even sure where I am, you say honestly. A long pause. Then, for once, mercy. Go. You blink. Really? Before we change our minds, you don't ask questions. You move. Down the corridor. Around the bend. Away from the memory of spontaneous conspiracies and overly emotional avians. You find a bench, sit, exhale, and think, maybe I should have just delivered apples. You sit there, motionless, feeling like the human embodiment of the word accidental. The bench is hard. The air smells faintly of old incense and newer panic. You take a moment, just one, to breathe, to remind yourself you are not technically dead yet, which is honestly your biggest win of the day. Then behind you, footsteps, but not clanging armored boots, soft ones, slippers. You twist slightly to look. A man in long dark robes walks past, graceful, silent, with hands tucked neatly into his sleeves. He doesn't glance your way, but behind him trail two guards, fully armed, fully alert, fully looking at you. You freeze mid-breath, because something about this man screams important. Maybe it's the embroidered collar, maybe it's the fact that the guards are scanning every shadow like it might insult his haircut. You rise slowly and back into the stone wall behind your bench. The guards pass. One lingers. He speaks softly. You didn't bow. You nod. I'm bowing in spirit. Bow physically, he says. You do. Low, too low. You nearly headbutt the bench. The guard snorts. You can't tell if it's derision or suppressed pity. But he moves on. Historians still debate how much protocol was expected for palace bureaucrats versus royalty. But one thing was consistent. Don't guess. If you bowed too much, you might look like a jester. Too little, and you might not look ever again. You slink away from the hallway, seeking somewhere less filled with unspoken rules and actual weaponry. You find a garden. Not the royal kind, manicured to within an inch of its life. No, this is the utilitarian garden. Herbs, roots, possibly medicinal weeds. You've accidentally stumbled into the apothecary courtyard. And of course it's guarded. One man, sitting beneath an olive tree, half asleep. He's older, silver-bearded, with one hand resting on the hilt of a very real sword. He watches you approach with one eye. Lost? You nod. He points to a path between two stone planters. That way, but no picking anything. Not even for just smelling. We had an incident last week. You follow the path. It winds behind a low wall, then through a shaded arch. The space opens into a rectangular terrace, where another guard sits with a book. You pause. A reading guard? He looks up. What? I didn't expect reading. He gestures around. Quiet post. Poison monitoring. You either study or you start naming clouds. You edge closer. Poison monitoring. He taps the table next to him. Small dishes, dried leaves, a very suspicious powder. We test the royal food. Sample bites, tiny amounts. Sometimes we use rats. Sometimes we use Steve. Who's Steve? He jerks a thumb behind him. You look, a goat, tethered, slightly cross-eyed, possibly immortal. He survived 14 tastings, the guard says with reverence. You stare at the goat. Steve blinks slowly. You nod respectfully. And that's when the guard frowns. Wait, you delivered figs, right? You hesitate. Yes, a while ago. He flips through a small leather-bound log. Did they have a glaze? You don't know what he means. Sticky. Like honey? You shrug helplessly. He sighs and stands. We'd better test Steve. And just like that, you've triggered a protocol fig alert. Steve munches a fig slice. Everyone watches. Silence. Chewing. More chewing. Then, a burp. The guard exhales in relief. He's fine. You smile. Unless, the guard adds, that was his death burp. Hard to tell with goats. You no longer smile. Anyway, he waves you on. You should go. You've been lingering. You shuffle out of the apothecary garden. where food meets fear, and Steve is clearly the real power behind the throne. The corridor ahead is narrow, flanked by statues, busts of old guards, some looking noble, some looking like they strongly disapprove of your choices. You pass them all, quietly whispering, "I'm trying." At the end, a heavy wooden door. You knock. No response. You knock again. A small eye slot slides open. A pair of eyes squint at you. You're not scheduled. "I'm not even entirely conscious," you say. Pause. "Fair," the voice says. The door creaks open. Inside, the guards' resting quarters. Cots, lockers, a rack of polished spears, and something bubbling in a pot. 3 guards lounge inside. 2 glance up. 1 doesn't bother. You stand awkwardly near the door. 1A nods. "You're the fig person." "That's me," you sigh. Another gestures to a cot. "Sit." You look like you need to. You sit. The cot smells like leather, metal, and mild regret. They offer you a cup of something warm. You sip. It tastes like bark and diplomacy. The one who nodded speaks again. "You're lucky." "I feel the opposite," you reply. "No," he says. "You made it through 4 checkpoints, 2 interrogation nodes, 1 parrot review, and the fig test." You blink. "That wasn't a test." "Everything's a test," he says. You stare into your bark tea. Another guard grunts. "You didn't cry. That's good. We had a guy last week cry from the posture exam." You nod solemnly. "He's gone now," the guard adds. You decide not to ask where. Eventually you rise, thank them. One offers your sandals back, cleaned, stamped with an official seal, cleared. No hidden daggers. Progress. You step back into the corridor. Less lost now, still overwhelmed. But there's a new feeling rising. Not comfort, not safety, just familiarity. You are now slightly less edible to the guards, and that's something. You walk with your newly cleared sandals, each step making a soft, padded shift against the polished stone. It's the sound of someone who has technically passed multiple evaluations, but is still deeply unsure why. Up ahead, the hallway curves gently, an architectural decision likely meant to prevent anyone from sprinting directly at royalty, or maybe just to confuse newcomers. It's working. At the curve's end stands a checkpoint. You were hoping those were behind you. 2 guards again, one tall and impossibly skinny, the other compact like a barrel made of suspicion. The tall one squints at your sandals. Been cleared? You nod and lift one foot like a toddler showing off new shoes. He inspects it, frowns. "Where's your stamp?" You point. He bends closer. "That's the old clearance seal." You blink. "Old?" "It expired last month. We've updated the dagger standards." You stare at him, trying to decide if that sentence makes any sense at all. The barrel-sized guard leans forward. New daggers are smaller, more creative. Someone snuck in a blade last week disguised as a fish scale. Historians still argue whether it was a real assassination attempt. The tall one adds, "Could have been a seafood allergy." They step aside. "You'll need to go to reinspection." You begin to laugh. Not loudly, not bitterly. Just that soft, quiet wheeze of someone who's lost control of their own plotline. You turn around, backtrack, down the corridor, left at the fresco of a peacock playing a harp, right at the door that smells like vinegar and failure. This time, the inspection room has a different guard, middle-aged, balding, possibly knitting. He looks up. "Again?" You nod. "New dagger standards." He sighs, motions for you to stand on a low platform. You do. He circles you like a hawk with a clipboard, taps your shoulder with a stylus. Posture's improved. That's something. Then the testing begins. He inspects your sandals, checks the straps, measures the width. flicks the sole, asks you to walk, turn, pivot. At one point, he asks if your left foot has ever shown signs of insubordination. You stare at him. He scribbles something down. Then he pulls out a small wand. Not magical, worse. A scent wand. It smells like copper and soap and regret. He waves it over your feet, your knees, your belt. Looking for residue, he mutters. Certain plotters soak linen in lemon oil mixed with ink root. Shows up under the wand. You don't ask how they found this out. Eventually he leans back. You pass. You sag with relief. He stamps your sandals. Clearance V2.1 and hands you a slip of parchment. This expires in 5 days. 5 budget cuts. You leave. Back through the peacock corridor. Past the oil painting of someone clearly being judged by a squirrel. Up a small flight of stairs with uneven risers, clearly designed to trip spies. You finally reach the checkpoint again. The guards nod. One examines your stamp. The other asks, "Any lemon oil on you?" "Just inner citrus trauma," you mutter. They wave you through. You step into what appears to be a library. A palace library. The change in atmosphere is instant. The air is cooler, softer. The light, filtered through stained glass, falls in stripes across long tables. There are scrolls, books, maps, and a librarian who glares at you like you just sneezed on parchment. But even here, especially here, guards, 2 by the central column, one holding a spear, the other a feather duster. You approach cautiously. "Name," the feather duster says. You give it. The name you've been using anyway. Could be yours. Could be someone else's. At this point, you'd answer to Fig Basket McPanic. He checks a list. Purpose? Is curiosity? He doesn't love that answer. You're not a scribe, the spear guard adds. You're not robed. I got lost. He raises an eyebrow. That's not illegal. A pause. Yet. They let you pass. The library is enormous. Quiet, but not peaceful. It hums with the tension of centuries. Scrolls are not just documents. They're weapons, records, blackmail, secret recipes. People have been executed for less than a comma. At the far end, you notice a small locked cabinet. 2 guards sit beside it, one asleep, the other very much not. You approach. "Don't," the awake one says. "I wasn't." You were thinking it. It's not even readable," he continues. "That scroll's sealed by 5 royal orders and 1 family curse." You back away. Behind you, the librarian coughs. Loudly. You jump. She approaches. Thin. Severe. Smells faintly of ink and misery. "Why are you breathing near the family trees?" "You didn't know these scrolls were family trees." "I'm sorry. I'll breathe somewhere else." She stares at you. Long. Too long. Then, in a tone reserved for dust mites and philosophical errors, she says, "Leave." You do. Quickly. Back through the checkpoint. Past the guards. Down a hallway where even the torches seem to whisper, "You don't belong." You need an exit. An actual exit. Preferably one not guarded by riddles, parrots, or footwear standards. Then finally you see it. A doorway. Plain. Stone. No decorations. But above it, a sign. Deliveries only. And beside it, a guard. Slumped. Asleep. You stare. He snores. You walk slowly. Slowly. You reach the door. It creaks open. No alarm. No parrot. Just a stairwell. And on each stair, fewer rules. You exhale. You descend. Each step feels lighter. Less surveillance. Less tension. Fewer historical debates. Staring at you from carved lintels. You're almost free. Or so you think. Because of course this is a palace. And palaces never let go that easily. The stairwell curves down into a cool, echoey tunnel, less like an exit and more like the beginning of a suspiciously long mystery novel. The walls are stone, slightly damp, and smell faintly of mildew, secrets, and boiled root vegetables. You keep walking, because what else is there to do? Each footstep sounds louder here, like it's trying to alert someone 2 floors up that you're attempting to leave quietly. Eventually, you reach a landing. The door is wooden, old, the kind with bolts big enough to stop a mammoth, but, ironically, hanging slightly off the hinge. You push it open and step into a basement. You are in the palace underbelly. It's a storage area, dimly lit by flickering torches, crates stacked like forgotten ambitions, barrels, sacks, a chair missing one leg, and of course, because it's mandatory at this point, a guard. He's leaning against a pillar, chewing what appears to be licorice root. He doesn't startle, doesn't reach for a weapon, just looks at you like you're a broom that's wandered off script. Exit? You nod. He gestures behind him. Next door, but you'll need clearance. You hold up your clearance V2.1 stamp. He squints. Warehouse exit needs V3. You stare. I got cleared less than an hour ago. He shrugs. Policy changed 10 minutes ago. New directive. Too many people escaping through produce crates. You want to scream. Instead, you say, "What's V3?" He points to a door on the opposite end of the basement. Inspection Room C. They'll do a surprise object check. Make sure you're not smuggling anything. I have sandals and an empty stomach. Still counts, he says. You trudge over to Inspection Room C. The door opens before you knock. Inside, 3 guards. One is yawning. One is knitting something suspiciously shaped like a sword cozy. The third motions you inside. Standard check, he says. Hands, feet, soul. You blink. My soul? Metaphor, the knitting one mumbles, mostly. They start. They pat your sleeves, tap your belt, check your pockets, which is impressive because you didn't have any until now. Then, questions. What's your purpose? Existential or logistical? Do you harbor intent? I like what kind. The yawn guard leans forward. Do you intend anything? I intend to leave. They nod. Intent to leave is intent enough. They mark something on a board. Then, the final test. Please recite the royal exit code. You blink. There's a code? The knitting guard sighs. Of course there's a code. This is a palace. We have codes for everything. Entering, exiting, blinking in the direction of royal pets. You feel faint. The yawn guard leans in again. We'll give you a hint. It's a phrase. Okay. 3 words. All right. It's also something most visitors scream after their second interrogation. You think, you search your memories. The guards, the parrots, the goat named Steve. Then you say it. Never again, please. The guards nod solemnly. That's the one. You are officially cleared for departure. They stamp your wrist. A gentle thunk that feels like victory. You turn toward the exit. But before you leave, the knitting guard calls out, "One tip." You turn. He points toward your feet. Walk like you belong. You nod, and you do, through the last hallway, past crates labeled in 12 languages, over a floor sticky with old grape juice, and maybe someone's dreams. Finally, you see it. The exit door. It's small, unadorned, just a slab of wood and a faint crack of daylight underneath. You reach for it, and just as you do, another guard appears. Of course. This one's older, probably born wearing armor. He doesn't smile. He doesn't frown. He just says, "We need a story." You blink. What? For the log, he explains. Every departure needs a story. Otherwise, the royal record keepers get upset. They like narrative closure. You rub your temples. A story? He nods. Something brief, colorful, slightly embarrassing, if possible. You think for a second. Then say, fig delivery gone wrong, accused by parrot, cleared by goat, failed posture exam, passed soul check, still confused. The guard writes it down. Excellent. We'll call it the mildly suspicious pilgrim of fruit. You raise an eyebrow. There are worse titles, he adds. Someone last week got labeled the man who mistook a peacock for a door. You nod slowly. Then, without further comment, the guard opens the door. Sunlight floods in. Actual sunlight. Warm. Real. Blissfully free of side eye. You take a step, then another. And for the first time today, you walk unguarded. No one watching. No one stamping. No birds screaming about treason. You've made it. But as the heavy door closes behind you, one thought lingers. That palace? It'll remember you. You just hope it remembers your sandals more fondly than your posture. Freedom smells like warm bread. Or maybe that's just the bakery next door to the palace wall. Either way, the sunlight hits your face, your shoulders, even the top of your slightly overheated scalp. And for the first time today, you don't feel like you're about to be inspected for emotional contraband. You walk, not shuffle, not sidle, walk. But here's the thing. After surviving palace guards, courtyards of accusation, and a goat with elite culinary judgment, regular life feels weirdly untrustworthy. You eye a flower cart like it might bite you. A child runs past and you brace instinctively for a guard to leap from a roof and tackle them for excessive cheerfulness. You pass a woman selling embroidery. She offers a smile. You try to return it, but the muscles in your face have forgotten how non-suspicious expressions work. You take a turn down a quieter street where ivy creeps up, walls and shutters hang at slightly artistic angles. And you realize something odd. You miss the guards. Not emotionally, of course. You're not writing poetry about them. But their presence, loud, armored, terrifying, made sense. The rules were harsh, yes. Arbitrary? Constantly. But they were also predictable. Sort of. Out here, it's just people. People who don't ask for sandal stamps or soul evaluations or have parrots trained to recite state secrets. It's unsettling. You pause by a fountain. Sit. Drink from a ladle chained to the edge, which smells faintly of copper and freedom. Then, behind you, a cough. You freeze. Please. Not another checkpoint. But it's not a guard. It's a man. Slender, robes too nice for this district. A silver clasp at his collar shaped like a small, silent scream. Excuse me, he says. Did you just leave the palace? You look at him, at his embroidered sleeves, at the shadowy figure trailing behind him, who's definitely not just an assistant. You nod, cautiously. He smiles, not warmly. We've been looking for someone with your level of resilience. Oh no, you stand, slowly. I'm not applying for anything. You misunderstand, he says. This isn't an invitation. Of course not. It's another mission, another game, another hallway, but with better lighting. He hands you a scroll. You don't open it. He nods once, turns, and vanishes into the alley like mist with a pension plan. You sit back down, scroll in hand. It's sealed with wax, not royal, private. The seal is unfamiliar. 2 crossed spoons and a frowning moon. You set it down, walk away. 3 steps, 4, then turn back and pick it up again because something in you has changed. Once you survive a palace, truly survive it, with your posture corrected and your parrot trauma processed, you don't go back to being a fig courier. You've seen too much, heard too many secrets disguised as snack inspections. You've become part of the system's soft underbelly, not by choice, but by persistence. Back in ancient Persia, there was a phrase for people like you, shadow feet, those who navigated the royal maze without map, favor, or family name. Historians still argue whether they were spies, fools, or just very lucky. You walk on, and as the scroll knocks gently against your thigh with each step, you start planning. Not your escape this time, but your next entry, because once you've learned how to survive palace guards without modern help, you start to wonder what else you can survive. You turn a corner and vanish into the city. Midnight. The palace looks different at night, not darker, just quieter, but not in a peaceful way. It's the kind of silence that holds its breath, that presses against your ears, that listens back. And in that silence, they walk. The night shift guards. You've been allowed back in, sort of. That scroll with the spoons and frowning moon, turns out it was an unofficial summons. Not royal, not noble, just connected, which in palace language means you're still expendable, but now with a job title. Your new task, courier, but not the fun fruit carrying kind. No, you're now tasked with walking scrolls from one wing to another under the cover of absolute silence, while trying not to die of anxiety. The halls are lit by sparse torches, their flames barely swaying. You carry a satchel of sealed documents, each one marked with a different animal: owl, snake, beetle. No one explains why. Probably better not to ask. Ahead, you see them. The guards. They move differently at night. Less stomping, more gliding. Their armor is muted, wrapped in cloth to reduce noise. Their faces are shadowed. One even seems to have smeared something dark across his cheeks. Possibly soot, possibly regret. You try to step lightly. They still hear you. They always hear you. Courier, one hisses. You freeze. Show your pass. You dig in your belt pouch, fingers fumbling until they grasp the stiff parchment marked with a tiny inked moth. The guard examines it, sniffs it, why? Then lets you pass. With a single nod that probably means, I could kill you with a spoon, but I'm tired. You walk on, past statues that seem to blink, past curtains that whisper even when there's no wind, and past doors. So many doors. Each guarded, each judged. Night guards are different from the daytime crowd. They're quieter, yes, but also more internal. You get the sense they're thinking all the time, calculating, watching patterns in the dust, watching each other. Because here's the thing, at night, the palace becomes a brain, and the guards, they're the neurons firing in the dark. In ancient Egypt, certain temples had night guards who were expected to dream properly. That is, their dreams were believed to be messages from gods, or worse, omens of rebellion. If your guard dreamed of fire, triple the watch. Dreamed of a pig, immediate purification. Historians still debate whether this was sincere spiritual practice or just an elaborate excuse for sleeping on the job. You keep moving. At one point, a door creaks open beside you. Just a sliver, a single eyeball peers through. You freeze again. Then the eye blinks twice, slowly, and disappears. The door shuts. You do not ask questions. You reach the next checkpoint. Two guards, one playing a two-stringed instrument badly, the other pretending not to hear. You offer your scroll pouch. The musical guard flicks through it with fingers as quick as suspicion. Which direction? He asks. West wing. He pauses. Too quiet over there tonight. Good? He frowns. No, bad. Apparently, palace logic is inverse. If it's noisy, something's happening. If it's quiet, something's about to happen. You get waved on again. Now the floor changes. Gone are the stone slabs. Now it's soft, carpeted. The kind of carpet that swallows footsteps like secrets. You wonder, is this luxury Or just another surveillance tactic? Probably both. In one hallway, you spot a group of guards not standing, but sitting, cross legged, eyes closed. You pause. They don't move, they just sit, meditating, maybe communing with the architecture. You step past. One opens an eye. Too loud, he whispers. I was thinking quietly, you whisper back. Exactly, he says, too loud. You apologize to the floor, to the air, to the abstract concept of echo. Further along, you reach the final gate to the West Wing. But it's not just a guard, it's a knight captain. This is clear from the cape, and the stick, and the attitude. He doesn't look up when you approach. He just says, "What's the code?" You blink. I wasn't given one. He sighs. What's the mood of the palace tonight? You scramble. Think fast. Uh, tense, but with notes of roasted barley. He looks up, smirks. Acceptable. He opens the gate. Inside, the West Wing is indeed quiet. No servants, no footsteps, just the sound of something dripping somewhere, and the gentle click click of insects you really hope are metaphorical. You deliver the scrolls, slide them into the correct slots. One for the High Steward, one for the Royal Dream Interpreter, one labeled simply the back room. You do not open that one. As you exit, the captain stops you. Job done? Yes. Survived? Barely. Good, you're learning. You nod, tired. Your feet ache. Your brain is soft pudding, but you're still standing. He hands you a biscuit. Ginger, crumbly. You bite into it without question. And for a moment, in that candlelit corridor, everything is still. Even the guards, even the paranoia. Because sometimes surviving the night shift isn't about stealth or speed. It's about understanding that the palace never truly sleeps. It just blinks slower. You return from the West Wing like a ghost with crumbs on your shirt. The ginger biscuit lingers in your mouth. Sweet, spicy, strangely ominous. You chew slower now, more out of dread than digestion, because as you pass the hall of whispering draperies, which is definitely not haunted, no matter what the guard named Tolan said, you hear someone shout, "You! You smell like treason." You freeze mid-step. The voice echoes from a shadowy alcove, and then out steps a guard, tall, rigid, and wearing gloves like he's about to host a dinner party with zero tolerance for rebellion. You blink. I'm sorry? He steps closer. He sniffs the air like a bloodhound who once minored in political science. Yes, that's definitely the scent. Treason. With undertones of biscuit. I ate a ginger one, you offer helpfully. That's not an excuse, it's a mask. You consider explaining your courier duties, your night shift survival, the goat named Steve, the dozen scrolls and posture trials you've endured, but you don't get the chance. Empty your satchel. You do. Slowly, respectfully. All that remains is one crumpled handkerchief, a lint covered date, and your clearance slip. He inspects each like it might unfold into a battle plan. The date? Too dry to be threatening. The handkerchief? Smells faintly of rosemary and regret. The clearance slip? Outdated by 7 minutes. Expired, he says flatly. It was valid when I entered this hallway. And time is relative, he says entirely seriously. Historians still debate whether royal guards invented bureaucracy or merely perfected it. In some medieval Chinese courts, guards were issued two timekeeping devices, one for official time and one for security time, which somehow always favored the guards. The treason-sniffing sentinel isn't alone anymore. Two other guards appear from behind a tapestry. One is holding a lantern, the other a notebook. The notebook guard speaks. What were you doing between the hours of 8th bell and biscuit? I was delivering scrolls, approved scrolls. Ask the night captain. We did. He said you were adequate. That sounds promising. He underlined it 3 times. Less promising. Lantern Guard takes a deep breath. Do you swear upon the royal floor wax that you are not engaged in any treasonous correspondence, verbal sedition, or pastry based conspiracies? You raise a hand. I solemnly swear I am not plotting, piping, or pecaning anything. They exchange glances. Then Treason Guard narrows his eyes. We'll need a scent confirmation. And that's when they summon the dog. You hear it before you see it. A low huff, the jingling of metals on a collar, and then out trots what can only be described as a muffin with legs. He's small, fuzzy, eyebrows like angry clouds. His name tag reads General Pickles. He approaches, sniffs your boots, snorts, then licks your shin. The guards freeze. Pickles stares up at you, then sits, very decisively. Interesting, one guard mutters. What does it mean? You whisper. Lantern Guard flips a page. According to the protocol chart, sitting indicates the target is boring. They all visibly relax. Being labeled boring is palace gold. Treason Guard clears his throat. Congratulations. You've passed the canine behavioral test. You are free to continue, pending a quick loyalty recital. Of course. They unroll a scroll. You read aloud. It's in verse. Something about devotion, fig neutrality, and promising not to wink too often in suspicious contexts. You recite it, tripping only once over the phrase, my allegiance shall never ferment. The guards nod, pleased. General Pickles trots away, presumably toward a celebratory nap. You are once again allowed to move through the palace like a person, and not a threat wrapped in ginger crumbs. As you walk, you reflect. There are many ways to be tested here. Posture, sandal contents, intent, and now, scent. Who knew your olfactory profile could nearly doom you? You pass into a quieter wing, columns rising into shadows, torchlight flickering across marble like nervous candle gossip. You think you're in the music corridor. Somewhere nearby, a harp is plinking softly, as though tuning itself to your heartbeat. Then another figure steps out, because of course, another guard. But this one doesn't draw a weapon, doesn't sniff you, doesn't even seem especially interested in your loyalty. She's younger, tired, holding a half-eaten pear. Hey, she says, you got accused of treason too? You nod. 5th time this week. She sighs. Same, it's the ginger. You sit together on a low bench, beneath a statue of a heroic-looking falcon. For a moment, neither of you speaks. You just chew in companionable exhaustion. Her, the pear. You, the inside of your cheek. She finally says, I miss the old uniforms. Less metal, more cloth. Easier to nap in. You glance sideways. You nap on duty? Not during the day, she winks. You both laugh, just a little, carefully, like it might be rationed. Then she stands, careful near the eastern arch. There's a guard who thinks dreams count as testimony. Good to know. She disappears down the corridor, blending into torchlight and fatigue. And you? You rise again, walking on, because in this place, even when you survive treason-sniffing dogs, midnight loyalty oaths, and suspicious fruit, you're never really done. You're just between inspections. You're not even 2 corridors past the scene with General Pickles before things get weird again. You walk into a courtyard expecting silence, and instead, step directly into a whisper war. 2 guards stand opposite each other near a statue of a man pointing at the sun, both hissing in low, rapid-fire tones. I told you, I booked this quadrant, one says, jabbing a gloved finger at the marble tile. The other scoffs. With whose authority? Captain Marceau doesn't control my shifts. Oh, please. Marceau practically invented this patrol route. They notice you, you freeze, instinctively straighten your back, which has now developed muscle memory for, please don't arrest me. Civilian, Guard 1 barks. Who do you report to? You blink. No one? Wrong answer. That's impossible, says Guard 2. Everyone reports to someone. Well, I report to the snack inventory once a week. Does that count? They exchange a look. A neutral, mutters one. Could be useful. No, says two. Could be a spy. Oh, now everything is a spy. You said that about the janitor. He was a spy. Only in the chest sense. You attempt a polite cough. It sounds more like a dying lute. They both turn back to you. You're standing, one says, on the border. You glance down. The stone beneath your left foot is slightly darker than the one under your right. That's symbolic? That's a problem, says two, because, of course, this isn't just any dispute. You've just walked into a guard turf war. Not official, not sanctioned, but deeply personal. Turns out palace guards, while united in their devotion to protecting crown and courtyard, are not immune to petty territorial politics. One believes in rigid patrol perimeters. The other believes in flex zones. This would be hilarious if you weren't directly in the blast zone. Step back, says one. Step forward, says two. You take a strategic sidestep into a flower bed. A thorn pokes your ankle with bureaucratic precision. The guards argue louder now. Words like protocol, decades of precedent, and quadrant sovereignty being tossed around like unusually sharp fruit. You finally interrupt. Couldn't you just share the courtyard? They stop. Look at you like you've just proposed communal sock ownership. Share, one whispers. This isn't a festival, sneers two. You hold up your hands. Sorry, I forgot. Guards don't do compromise. Only cross checks. A moment of silence. Then, inexplicably, they both laugh. It's not the warm, gentle laugh of friends. It's the exhausted, slightly unhinged laugh of two men who've worked too many night shifts under flickering torchlight. You're all right, says one, patting your shoulder with a gauntlet heavy enough to bruise your ancestry. Two sighs. Look, just stay out of the middle zones. They're contested. Noted. They part, grumbling. You escape the courtyard, wondering how many other architectural features are at war with themselves. In Byzantine palaces, historians still argue whether there were red zones for elite guards only and blue zones for standard patrols, creating overlapping areas of tension, especially near supply rooms and indoor plumbing. You believe it. You believe everything now. You pass into a shaded hall lined with mosaic panels, hunting scenes, dancing servants, one panel that seems to just depict someone crying into soup. Then, you hear footsteps, not yours, not heavy enough to be guards. You pause, peek around the corner, and spot a boy, young, maybe 10, dressed in servant's livery, eyes wide, holding a scroll like it might explode. You raise an eyebrow. He sees you, freezes, then bolts. Wait, you call, jogging after him. I'm not with the war. He darts down a side corridor, then ducks behind a curtain. You follow, and find yourself in a small chamber filled with laundry, steam, dampness. A guard's worst nightmare. The boy peeks out. You're not one of them? You shake your head. Define them. The guards arguing about chicken schedules and hallway dominance. Definitely not. He relaxes. You're the courier, right? You nod. Involuntarily, yes. He offers the scroll. It's for someone important. But I can't get past the corridor checkpoint. They'll grill me again about eye contact protocol. You sigh. Take the scroll. Another scroll. Because why not? It's sealed with a red ribbon and a faint scent of ink and plums. You don't ask. Who's it for? He whispers a name. You almost drop the scroll. Because that name? That's the personal steward to the royal advisor. The one who hasn't spoken aloud in years, but is rumored to communicate by subtle eyebrow movements. You now hold a message intended for an elite recipient with only two confirmed facial expressions. You walk again, back into the main halls, past two more guards bickering about the angle of their shadows, around a silent fountain, where you definitely saw someone winking at a pigeon. Finally, you reach the steward's door. Two guards, one asleep, the other watching you. You look like you've just walked through a ghost argument, he says. Close. You hand him the scroll. He looks at the seal, sniffs it. Plum ink, he mutters. Serious. Then he steps aside. Just like that. You did it. You survived a guard turf war, assisted an overworked child courier, and delivered a fruit-scented message without dropping it in the soup of despair. You might not be royalty. You might not even be important, but you're becoming something far more powerful in the palace ecosystem, extremely difficult to categorize. You leave the steward's quarters feeling like a veteran of three simultaneous wars, none of them officially declared. Your feet ache, your shoulders slump. You're starting to wonder if anyone in this palace ever truly sits down, and just when you think the night might finally grant you peace, a horn blows, not a war horn, not a fire horn. Worse, the ceremonial rehearsal horn. You hear it echo through the arches, followed by the unmistakable groan of guards rousing themselves from perfectly good, stationary, leaning positions. You peek around the nearest column and catch sight of what can only be described as a nightmare in motion, a full parade rehearsal. It's not for today. It's not even for this week. But apparently, this palace believes in being unnecessarily ready. A long line of guards marches into the main corridor, their armor polished to a level of existential reflection. Drummers tap quietly. Flag bearers wobble uncertainly under the weight of banners twice their size. And then a sergeant bellows, all non-guard personnel to the walls, which unfortunately includes you. You're herded toward a line of decorative tiles where several other unarmed individuals are already pressed. Couriers, scribes, possibly one guy who just delivers soup. You whisper to the soup guy. Why are we here? He shrugs. We make them feel like there's an audience. You nod. Of course. What's a parade rehearsal without an underpaid peanut gallery? A bell rings, and then it begins. Marching, turning, saluting, more turning, a coordinated sword spin, another turn, then they march back the other way. You blink. That's it, you whisper. The soup guy shakes his head. That was formation 1. There are 6 more. You make a sound somewhere between a sigh and a faint internal scream. In medieval Japan, the guards of Kyoto's imperial palace were said to rehearse ceremonial processions so often they wore grooves into the courtyard stones. Historians still argue whether the rehearsals were for defense readiness or just a very expensive form of synchronized dance therapy. Here it's mostly sweat and stiff necks. You watch as the captain calls for reverse salute, pattern B. 25 guards flip their weapons upside down, bow in reverse, and somehow make eye contact with every person in the room. You flinch. Soup guy drops a spoon. Someone coughs. The captain shouts, "Again!" An hour passes. Then another. You lose feeling in your left foot. Your right foot gains a new blister that you're 90% sure is shaped like the captain's face. Eventually, you stop trying to follow the formations. You begin naming the guard types. There's helmet too low guy who keeps bumping into the person in front of him. There's overenthusiastic turn girl who spins like a wedding centerpiece on espresso. There's also here against his will guard who keeps sighing like it's a competitive sport. And then there's Banner Boy. Poor, wobbly Banner Boy whose flag catches a stray wind and nearly lifts him 2 feet off the ground before he's tackled by three colleagues and one very confused parrot. Yes, the parrot is back. Apparently, it's ceremonial, or just nosy. You press further into the wall, hoping the mosaic behind you absorbs guilt. And still, the rehearsal continues. Now they're rehearsing rehearsal transitions. A horn blows. The guards freeze. Another horn. They rotate. Another. They look at the ceiling. Why? You don't know. Maybe the ceiling's in charge now. You glance over at a nearby guard, not in formation. An observer, clipboard in hand. Excuse me, you whisper. When will this end? He flips a page. Soon? When is soon? When the captain achieves peace with his father's ghost. You blink. Oh! He nods solemnly. Another horn. The captain yells, "Let's run the dry curtain reveal." Several guards sprint to opposite ends of the hall and yank on a large velvet curtain, which drops suddenly to reveal a bust of a royal ancestor looking extremely unimpressed. One trumpet player misses his cue. The captain throws a stick. You don't ask where he got the stick. A bell rings again. Rehearsal 4 is complete. You're told to hydrate. Soup Guy faints gently against a pillar. A medic, who may or may not be an alchemist, dabs something minty on his forehead and whispers a protection chant. And then, tragedy. One of the standard bearers steps left instead of right. The captain stares. Rewind, he says. Everyone groans. The guards march backwards. Literally. Back to position. Again. You whisper to the clipboard guard. Why do they do this? He shrugs. If we ever face a really ceremonial invasion, we'll be ready. You don't know what that means, but you believe him. You believe everything now, because this isn't just performance, it's ritual. And rituals have gravity. You stand straighter, not out of pride, but to avoid being scolded by an assistant drummer who has somehow deputized himself into your posture coach. At long last, the final formation ends. The captain nods. Everyone claps. You too, because if you don't, someone might think you didn't enjoy it enough. As the guards file out, sweating, exhausted, yet somehow smug, you stagger away from the wall. Soup Guy gives you a thumbs up. Same time tomorrow? You look at him. Only if I'm unconscious. You think you're free. The parade rehearsal has ended. The guards have marched themselves into their off-duty barracks or wherever they go to scream into pillows embroidered with honor codes. Even the parrot has retreated to whatever mysterious perch it came from, probably to file a report. You limp toward a quieter wing, your limbs moving like you've been puppeteered by someone who hasn't slept in 2 days, which coincidentally might be accurate. Then a voice cuts through the corridor. You. Yes, you with the biscuit crumbs and existential aura. You turn slowly. It's a clerk. Not a guard this time, but someone worse. A palace courtroom scribe. He's holding a scroll. And a very dramatic frown. You're needed as a witness, he says. I didn't see anything. You will. Before you can protest, he shepherds you into a side courtroom, lit by 2 flickering oil lamps and one aggressively large window where the moon looks mildly concerned. At the center, a lone guard, helmet slightly crooked, eyes watery, sneezing. Yes, the scribe mutters. This is the incident. The judge, a woman with silver hair and a collar that may double as a guillotine blade, glares. Explain the sneeze. The guard clears his throat. It snuck up on me, Your Honor. Describe the buildup. I felt a tingle, then regret, then release. The courtroom murmurs. The scribe leans over and whispers to you. He sneezed during the unveiling of the royal salt container. That moment was supposed to be silent. You nod solemnly, as if this is not, in fact, your dream of a nonsensical courtroom drama come true. A herald clears his throat. Witness, please step forward. You step. You are now an official palace sneeze witness. You take the stand. State your qualifications, says the judge. You pause. I've survived 6 interrogations, a turf war, 3 different scroll deliveries, and 1 emotional parrot. She nods. Acceptable. The questioning begins. Did you hear the sneeze? Yes. How loud was it? Moderate, possibly disruptive, definitely moist. The judge winces. Did the sneeze cause a disturbance among the onlookers? One woman gasped. A cat knocked over a teacup, and I think a tapestry curled slightly at the edge. The scribe writes furiously. Was the sneeze intentional? Historians, you say slowly, still argue whether any sneeze is truly intentional. The judge leans back. That's a fair point. The guard sniffles again. The judge sighs. Well, she says, we can't have unexpected sound during sacred object unveilings, but we also can't punish people for nasal responses to overly spiced ceremonial incense. She bangs a small ornamental gavel made of polished fig wood. Verdict. Community service. 2 nights dusting royal portraits and reciting etiquette manuals in the courtyard. The guard bows, sniffles, leaves. The scribe turns to you. Thank you for your service, he says. Do I get anything? A voucher, he says, handing you a slip. Redeemable for 1 ladle of stew or 3 minutes of uninterrupted sitting. You pocket it like treasure and stumble out of the courtroom. The air feels lighter. You walk, dazed, into another hall, a quiet one this time. No banners, no guards. Just rows of marble busts, each one labeled with names like Sir Reginald of Poor Decisions and Dame Violetta the Reasonably Tall. You find a bench, you sit, you breathe. And then, from the shadows, a figure joins you, a scholar, or maybe a very exhausted juggler. Was that your first courtroom drama? He asks. You nod. Yes, and hopefully my last. He chuckles. I once testified in the case of the cracked goblet. It got ugly. You wait, he continues. Apparently the goblet had sentimental value to 3 different people, one of whom wasn't technically alive. You nod again. In a place like this, you learn to stop asking follow-ups. You sit in silence together for a while. Then he stands, stretches, and says, if you hear bells ringing in a minor key, just run. Why? No time to explain. And he disappears into a side passage. You sit a while longer, then rise. Your voucher burns gently in your pocket. You follow a hallway that slopes downward, where torchlight flickers over polished stone and a soft humming can be heard. Either someone singing or a very confused swarm of bees. And as you reach the base of the corridor, you see a kitchen. Blessed, glorious kitchen. Inside, a stew pot, a ladle, and a person who does not ask your clearance level, only whether you want lentils or mystery root. You hand over your voucher, and for 3 minutes, no one questions your existence. No one inspects your posture. No one asks about sneezes, scrolls, turf wars, parrots, dreams, or dagger sandals. You sit, you sip, and you survive. The stew is edible. Actually, that's unfair. It's delicious. If your definition includes the phrase surprisingly hearty for something gray. You sit on a stool in the far corner of the palace kitchen, steam rising into your face, cloaking you in the warm perfume of lentils, root vegetables, and what you suspect is a distant cousin of garlic. Around you, the kitchen bustles, quietly. Cooks glide like ghosts with aprons. Pots clink. Bread is sliced with reverent precision. You are safe here. Or so you think, because just as you tilt your bowl to capture the last glorious spoonful, a guard clanks in through the side door. Armor, boots, helmet. Everything about him screams trouble with purpose. And then he stumbles. Clank, clink, clatter. The entire kitchen freezes. Everyone stares. The guard looks down. at the ceremonial sword now lying at his feet. No one moves. Even the fire pauses, like it wants no part in this. He bends slowly, picks up the blade, inspects it. He frowns. It's chipped, he mutters. You blink. You saw it fall. You heard it bounce. But chipped? The head cook narrows her eyes. That's not just chipped. That's a full-on nick. The room inhales collectively. You, for some reason, are still holding your bowl like a security blanket. The guard's face turns pale. This is a royal issue. Ceremonial blade. It's not meant to be chipped. That, the cook says gently, means someone's going to write a report. Another cook appears behind her, holding a ledger. Oh no, the inventory ledger. You've heard whispers. Once something is entered in the ledger, it cannot be undone. The ledger keeper speaks. Please describe the event. The guard stammers. It slipped. Why? I tripped. On what? He looks down. Possibly eaten stew. All eyes turn to you. You instinctively hold up your empty bowl like it might grant diplomatic immunity. The ledger keeper squints. Civilian? Technically. Did you spill stew on the floor? You scan the floor. There's a faint glisten. Could be stew, could be water, could be fate. I may have ladled too aggressively. The cook sighs. It happens. The ledger keeper begins writing. Item, ceremonial sword. Status, chipped, due to suspected stew incident. Witnesses, civilian courier, 1 pot of lentils, several guilty stares. The guard groans softly. This'll go on my record. The cook pats his shoulder. Maybe they'll invent a new title. Guardian of the slippery broth. He glares. You try not to giggle. In some medieval courts, ceremonial weapons were so sacred, guards were required to carry them in pairs. 1 real, 1 decorative. If the decorative one chipped, it meant misfortune. If the real one chipped, it meant exile. Or, at the very least, dish duty for a week. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic punishment or just passive-aggressive housekeeping. Here, it's apparently both. Someone has to report this to the armory master, the cook mutters, and he hasn't smiled since the year of the falling banner. They all look at you. Why? Because in the palace, the rule is simple. When no one wants the job, give it to the most tired-looking person nearby, which is naturally you. Me? You say. You're already a courier, the guard shrugs. An unofficial witness to at least 3 disasters, adds the cook. You have that face, the ledger keeper says. What face? I'm too exhausted to lie. Very trustworthy. So they hand you the sword, wrapped in cloth, heavy, slightly sad. The handle still smells of duty and disappointment. You sigh. They give you a parchment. Instructions. Signature line, stain at the bottom from Yes, Stew. You leave the kitchen and start the trek to the armory hall, now cradling 1 chipped ceremonial sword and a soul slowly fraying at the edges. The hallway is long, too long, designed, probably, to intimidate sword bearers and ensure no one skips leg day. Finally, you arrive. The doors are enormous, bronze, embossed with weapons and, oddly, a smiling squirrel. You knock, a long pause. Then, creak, the doors open, revealing an enormous man, beard like a legend, eyebrows that could carry small messages, and an expression carved from ancient disappointment. He is the armory master. You hold out the sword. He stares. Chipped, he says. You nod. He doesn't move. He just says, how? You take a deep breath and tell the truth. The stew, the slip, the sword, the ledger, the whispers. He listens. When you finish, he nods once, almost imperceptibly. Then he takes the sword, turns, and walks back into the forge. Not another word. You're dismissed. No applause. No forgiveness scroll. No redemption biscuit. Just silence. You exit. You survive the Great Sword Drop incident. You didn't die. You didn't get arrested. You didn't even get yelled at, which frankly might be the most suspicious part of all. You shuffle away from the armory hall, still feeling the ghost weight of that chipped ceremonial sword in your hands, like your palms remember the trauma even after it's gone. You're determined, absolutely 100% committed, to not get dragged into anything else for the next hour, which lasts exactly 17 seconds. That's when a guard bursts out of a side passage, spots you, and yells, "You!" You freeze mid step. You consider pretending you're someone else, perhaps a passing shrub, but you're too tired to be leafy. "You're the scroll runner, right?" he pants. Sometimes, against my will, he nods and shoves a scroll into your hands. It's unsealed, slightly crumpled, and has a smudge that smells suspiciously like fig jam. This needs to get to the eastern wing, fast. You open your mouth to protest, but he's already gone, vanishing with the urgency of someone who knows precisely what he's avoiding. You stare at the scroll. There's no name, no title, just three words, written hastily in thick ink. Go, now, hurry. And just like that, you're running. Sort of. It's more of a desperate hobble sprint, with occasional wall bracing, and one near collision with a lady carrying a platter of fermented cheese. You pass familiar hallways, the tapestry of judgmental ferrets, the corridor that always smells like old soup, the haunted broom closet no one mentions. You're getting close. The eastern wing looms ahead, known for its overly quiet guards and suspiciously symmetrical decor. And then you hear the whisper, "Psst, runner." You glance left. A different guard steps out of the shadows. He has a scroll in his hand. "Deliver this instead," he says. "What?" He pushes it toward you. "That other scroll, it's a decoy. This is the real one." You blink. "How do I know you're not the decoy?" He shrugs. "You don't. This is fine. Everything's fine." You're now holding two scrolls. One says, "Go now, hurry." The other is sealed with a stamp shaped like a lizard doing yoga. You consider your options. Option 1, choose randomly. Option 2, deliver both and run. Option 3, fake your own fainting episode and hide under a decorative vase. But the hallway is already shifting. A different guard emerges, this one taller, wearing a red sash. "Runner with me." You're marched briskly toward a door marked Strategic Communications, which feels like a trap or a euphemism. Inside, a table, three chairs, one nervous looking pigeon in a cage, and an older woman with ink stained fingers and the expression of someone who has seen things. She gestures to the scrolls. You set them down. "Which one's real?" she asks. "I don't know. I was handed both." She opens the first scroll. The Go Now one reads, grunts. Opens the Lizard Yoga one, reads, laughs. They both contradict each other. Do I get in trouble? She waves a hand. "No, you get promoted." You blink. "Congratulations," she says. "You're now officially a trusted dual scroll operative." This cannot be real. But she hands you a badge. It's wooden, roughly carved, shaped like a scroll that's either unraveling or sobbing. "Wear this," she says. "It means you've carried classified information while under philosophical distress." "Is that common?" "In this palace, absolutely." She pauses, leans in. "And now, I have a mission for you." "Of course, because why stop now?" She hands you a fresh scroll. This one is wax sealed, embossed with two crossed spoons and a duck. "This goes to the royal archivist, directly. No detours, no detainment, no goat-related distractions." You nod solemnly. Then begin the trek again, this time through the Whisper Gallery. where the walls echo everything you say, but 3 seconds late, and always slightly judgy. Halfway through, you hear a sound behind you. Footsteps. Fast ones. You quicken your pace. So do they. You duck behind a column. A guard rushes past, then another. You peek out and see a small group of guards chasing a child. It's the same courier boy from earlier, the one with the plum-scented scroll. And he's holding something. They yell, "That stop! That's not a toy!" He ducks into the fabric hall. You consider staying hidden, then sigh. You follow. Inside, bolts of silk hang like theatrical ghosts. You spot the boy crouching behind a crate. You join him. What did you take? He holds it up. It's a bell, small, silver, engraved. They said it summons the archivist, he whispers. You blink. So ring it? I did. It summoned 5 guards instead. You sigh. Take the bell. Take the boy by the arm. Lead him out calmly. The guards are waiting, but you speak first. He's with me. On assignment. They hesitate. Then spot your wooden badge. One whistles. Dual scroll operative? You nod gravely. Proceed, the tallest says, stepping aside. And just like that, you walk the boy to the archive hall. The doors open. Inside, 1,000 scrolls. 1,000 candles. 1,000 questions you're too tired to ask. A figure approaches, robe dragging, eyes like cloudy glass. You rang, he rasps. You hold out the scroll. He takes it, sniffs. Lemon wax, he says, then vanishes. You and the boy just stand there. Eventually he tugs your sleeve. Do I get a badge? You hand him a bread roll instead. Close enough. You exit the archive hall as the massive doors close behind you with a sound like the end of an era, or at least the end of a very confusing afternoon. The courier boy trots beside you, munching the bread roll like it's a badge of honor. You're too tired to argue. In fact, you're too tired to think, which means you're the perfect candidate for what happens next. A palace bell tolls, not a big one. Not the emergency bell, the meal bell, or the slightly ominous someone sneezed in the royal presence bell. This one is soft, dainty, almost musical. The courier boy gasps. That's the bell for the circle. You blink. The what now? He nods. The inner circle of guards. They meet when there's uncertainty. Uncertainty? You know, suspicion, confusion, unlabeled scrolls, missing socks. You groan. Too late. A passing guard sees you and points. You, courier, the circle has summoned you. Before you can protest, you are escorted into a narrow hallway that slopes downward into a place that definitely wasn't on any of the palace diagrams. The air changes, cooler, still, smelling faintly of dried ink and mystery. And then you're there. A stone chamber, circular of course, lit by torches placed in brackets shaped like various historic eye shapes. 7 guards sit in a ring, all older, all grim, all wearing very serious cloaks that look like they could double as heavy curtains in a thunderstorm. One of them gestures for you to stand in the center. Another clears his throat. We've called you here, he says, because, well, frankly, you've seen too much. Your stomach drops. We've reviewed your record. Oh no. Scroll mishaps, biscuit redistribution, parade interference, sword damage, unauthorized goat corridor access, suspicious stew behavior. You try to speak, but your mouth makes the sound of a pigeon apologizing. The tallest one leans forward. And yet, he says, you're still alive. Another guard raises an eyebrow. You've made enemies and friends, another counters. The cook likes you. The archivist sniffed him and didn't hiss, someone adds. The parrot, says a fourth, nodded at him, twice. There's a collective, They begin whispering among themselves. You shift from foot to foot. The boy courier peeks in from behind a tapestry, watching you like a tiny accomplice. Finally, the head of the circle speaks again. We've reached a conclusion. Here it comes. Banishment. Or worse, eternal stew stirring. You are hereby promoted, he says. You blink. Promoted to what? Shadow courier. You blink harder. That sounds dramatic. He nods. It is. Another guard hands you a small token. It's wooden, like your scroll badge, but this one's shaped like a turnip, with wings. You stare. The turnip of transit, he explains. Rare, symbolic, confusing. What does it do? No one knows. You nod. Somehow this tracks. You're now authorized, the head guard continues, to carry messages between any wings, bypass guard formations, and on rare occasion, interrupt ceremonial soup. This is the highest honor you can receive without wearing metal on your legs. But, he adds, this comes with responsibility. You nod solemnly. You will be watched. Of course. Tested. Naturally. Occasionally pranked. Expected. And should you succeed, should you survive, you may be granted access to the laundry of secrets. You gasp. Everyone gasps. Even the parrot, who has somehow appeared, gasps because the laundry of secrets is palace legend, where garments whisper things, where tunics record secrets in their seams, where cloaks, no, you're dismissed with reverence and just a little confusion. You exit, clutching your winged turnip badge, feeling equal parts powerful and underqualified. The courier boy follows, wide-eyed. Can I be your assistant? He whispers. You pause. Consider the long, ridiculous journey you've had. The stairs, the guards, the biscuits, the chipped sword, the hallway turf wars and scrolls that contradict reality. Then you nod. Yes, but only if you promise never to drop stew again. He salutes. You both march back up the corridor. You feel different now. Not stronger exactly, but heavier, with knowledge, weird titles, and the realization that somehow, in this mess of polished marble and ceremonial madness, you found a kind of rhythm. A weird rhythm, sure, but yours. You and the boy emerge from the underground circle chamber with a weight of strange new titles and a badge that looks like produce doing cosplay. You walk slowly, partly out of fatigue, mostly because you don't want to encounter anyone else asking for anything else. Spoiler, you do, because at the top of the stairwell, who's waiting? A palace janitor, but not just any janitor. This one's got keys, dozens, dangling like wind chimes. His robes are stained in strategic places. His eyebrows, impossible to ignore. You're the new shadow courier, he says without preamble. You blink. Yes? He nods. Come. The Queen's chamber needs clarification. You follow. You've learned not to ask. The boy, ever the loyal assistant, trots behind with his hands clasped behind his back like a tiny diplomat. You walk past the kitchens, which now smell of nutmeg, the guard dormitories, where someone is playing a lute suspiciously well, and into the velvet wing, a section so plush and quiet, it feels like walking into someone's extremely expensive dream. Here, guards walk on tiptoe, curtains billow unnecessarily, everything is lavender and fear. You arrive at the Queen's door. A guard nods. The janitor unlocks it. Inside, a disaster. Not dangerous, just absurd. There are scrolls everywhere. Hundreds, piled in chairs, stuffed into vases, rolled into shoes. In the center stands a woman in an ornate robe, hair tied up like an architectural blueprint, looking very unimpressed. Ah, she says, turning to you. The turnip courier. You bow slightly. Yes, ma'am. I've received too many messages, she huffs, all of them contradicting each other. You scan the room. Some scrolls read, meeting moved to fifth bell. Others say fifth bell canceled indefinitely. One simply reads, duck, duck, and then nothing else. I believe the guard hierarchy, she continues, has collapsed under the weight of its own ceremonies. You nod. I've seen the charts. They form a circle, then a triangle, then collapse into a question mark. She sighs. What I need is clarity and silence. You nod again, and stew? She raises an eyebrow. Possibly. You collect the scrolls into piles. The boy assists. You separate them by smell, urgency, and likelihood of being written by someone sleep deprived. After 30 minutes of decoding, most of which involves holding them up to candlelight and guessing the author based on their ink pressure, you finally isolate three that seem important. You hand them to her. She reads, smiles faintly. You, she says, may be the only sane person left in this marble trap. You beam with the confidence of someone who just succeeded accidentally. I believe, she says slowly, we need someone to keep the palace chaos from collapsing completely. Someone between the guards. Someone not loyal to any one hall, wing, or soup flavor. You freeze. You're talking about me. Yes? She steps closer. You've delivered scrolls under duress, survived ceremonial rehearsals, endured multiple guard interrogations, and somehow diffused the courtyard turf crisis. You whisper, that was mostly the goat. She ignores this. Would you, she asks, accept the title of Warden of Transmissions and Mild Disruptions? You blink. It's a lot of syllables, but it's also you. I accept. She hands you a pin. It's shaped like a scroll riding a turtle. Wear it with pride, she says, and confusion. It suits you. You bow. The janitor pats your shoulder. The boy offers you a grape. You decline politely, unsure of its political implications. As you leave the chamber, the hall feels different. You're not just a scroll runner anymore. You're a chaos translator, a courier of contradictions, a professional accidental diplomat. And the palace? It's the same strange place it's always been. Guards still argue about torch angles. The parrot still watches with judgmental curiosity. Someone, somewhere, is probably dropping stew on something important. But now, you're part of the system, or at least the system's soft buffer zone. And that's something. You stroll through the corridor one last time before nightfall. You pass a sleepy guard who nods in recognition. The archivist peeks out and waves a tiny candle. Even General Pickles, the royal dog, gives you a bark that sounds suspiciously like approval or indigestion. You sit on a bench near the central fountain. The boy courier curls up beside you and starts snoring quietly. Your badge gleams dully in the moonlight. And for the first time since this chaotic journey began, you rest. Because in a world of swords, scrolls, suspicion, and ceremonial chaos, you found your place. Right in the middle. Exactly where nobody wants to be. But everyone needs someone to stand. And now the marble floors are quiet. The guards have slowed their patrols to a gentle shuffle. The torches crackle softer, as if mindful not to wake the paintings. Somewhere in the distance, a lute plays a lullaby so slow, even the mice pause to sway. You lean your head back against the cool stone wall, breathing in the calm. The scent of beeswax and old parchment lingers in the air, along with a hint of lavender from the velvet wing. It's strange, isn't it? How a place so obsessed with ceremony and suspicion can still feel safe. You didn't ask for this night. You didn't volunteer to solve scroll mix-ups or testify in Sneeze Court or witness a swords and emotional breakdown. And yet, you did it all. With biscuits in your pocket, wit in your step, and an ever-growing list of strange titles you didn't know existed. So as your eyelids grow heavy, know this. You have earned the stillness. You've wandered palace halls most never see, met guards who argue about birds and banners, delivered scrolls that may or may not decide the future of fig taxation, and you've done it with your head mostly held high and your shoes mostly intact. The palace will spin again tomorrow. Ceremonies will be scheduled, stew will be spilled, but for now, just let it go. Sink into the silence. Let the night cradle you like a soft woolen cloak that smells faintly of roasted root vegetables. You are home, in the very heart of the absurd, and you are not alone. Good night, warden of transmissions and mild disruptions. Sleep well,